tell you how love has spoken in my brokenness. I heard a sound. It was a still, small voice calling. It was ancient. It was now. Love has spoken. Love has spoken. I was listening. Fluke or folly, luck of the draw. He was watching, had a little mercy on what he saw. God is in this heaven now, and I will soon be in the ground, but death will never.
Good evening. I'd like to take this time to thank everybody for coming out and welcome everybody to this informative event as part of the ongoing efforts of the Perry Pledge to bring our community together. My name's Ken Carmen. I'm a radio show host in Cleveland, as well as CBS Sports Radio, 92.3 The Fan, and the Cleveland Browns radio network, as well as a proud 2004 graduate of Perry High School. It brings me great pride to see a lot of folks here today. It's something that's difficult to talk about. It's something that has been very surprising for myself over the last few months and has caused me a great deal of reflection, a great deal of thought and consideration to my own time, where I only graduated high school not too very long ago, but also with small children, wondering what their future is for them and how I'll be able to get involved in their lives. So tonight, while I'll be joining you and hearing our very talented speakers to my left and what they'll be saying tonight, it's also a learning experience for myself and to learn what I can do now and what I'll be able to do for the future. We want to thank you again for coming out here for the Perry Pledge and remind you that after our speakers tonight, there will be a question and answer session that you can take advantage of with our resources to the north hallway as well as to the south hallway. I want to get my directions right. And then directly to the back here are our Perry resources. If somebody feels the need that they need to speak to a counselor, counseling is available. All you need to do is go back and speak to the people in the green shirt. Margaret is waving back there to anybody, and we can get you a talk as soon as you might need it. Again, we thank you very much for coming on out here. If you have any questions, we do encourage you. Please go ahead, write them down, take a note in your phone, but please remain seated until the end so we can hear our speakers speak, we can learn from our speakers, and learn how to be better together. Our first presenter is Dr. Ellen Rome, who will be presenting on the topic of adolescent mental health. Dr. Rome serves as the head of the Center for Adolescent Medicine and at the Cleveland Clinic. She received her undergraduate degree in psychology, magna cum laude from Yale, medical degree in Alpha Omega Alpha from Case Western Reserve, and completed her pediatric training at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Following her training, she completed a 3-year fellowship in adolescent medicine at Children's Hospital, Boston, during which time she also obtained a master's degree in public health at the Harvard University School of Public Health. Dr. Rome then joined the Cleveland Clinic, where she is now a professor of pediatrics at the Cleveland Clinic Lerner College of Medicine at Case. Please join me and welcome Dr. Rome.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? My mother should have been here for that introduction. So thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you to Superintendent Scott Beatty, to Dr. Margaret DeLillo, who's actually why I ended up here today, to all of our school leaders, Mr. Jason Conrad, Mrs. Diane Kittelberger, Mr. Joe Hugg, Miss Stacy Doherty, Chief of Police here, Chief Pomeski, and also our Perry Township trustees, Perry Fire, Perry Police, Perry Rotary, Perry Alumni, Perry Parents, Perry Friends, and also our friends and families from Jackson or from Canton. We're all here because this is a tough topic. And if I could go ahead with my first slide. We are here because we're all supporting the living, and we're going to prevent the next one together. Next slide. Oh, hang on. So, what are the stats? What kills teens? Right now, the #1 killer for kids is different than the #1 killer for people my age group or some of your age groups. Adults get killed by cancer and heart attacks and strokes. Kids get killed by car accidents first, suicide second, homicide third, unless you're an urban, poor, black young man, in which case it's homicide-suicide. And what we know is that 157,000 teens were taken to an emergency department each year for an attempted suicide. And 30% will try it again, usually after an inpatient stay. And 78% never talk to a doc about it, let alone their doc. And in the US, there's 5 clusters of suicide a year. We're the first, the last one of 2017 and the first one of, that spills into the first one of 2018. So you're living it, you're breathing it. There's things we can do together to prevent a next one. So next slide. Yeah, grief is personal. And a very, very good friend of mine sent me, after she had lost a 13-year-old, Megan Devine's book, It's Okay That You're Not Okay. And her favorite line of the book is that some things cannot be fixed, they can only be carried. So for those of you who are grieving actively, we're here with you to help you carry that and to figure out how we as a community can heal and keep living. Next one. And a lot of kids, a lot of families, we say, hear the question, why my kid? Why her kid or his kid? How did this happen? What's the difference between that kid and my kid? There are no safe spaces. My kid could be next. And we want to kind of be able to think, what should we ask? How do we recognize when our kids are in trouble so that we can actually prevent that next one? And what we know is that depression is like an iceberg. And actually, you can think of anxiety or any other mental health thing like an iceberg. And what we see is the tip of the iceberg. And so, for instance, we may see that they're sad. We may see that they're super irritable. We may see that they're acting bad. And what we don't see is the anger, the anxiety, changes in appetite, depression, emptiness, fatigue, guilt, feeling helpless, not being able to sleep. We certainly can see the cranky part. And being numb, oversleeping, too little sleep, self-harm, another red flag for I'm in distress. Feeling sluggish, feeling worthless. And sometimes we see mad and we translate it as bad. That's a bad kid. And we don't see it as a sad or depressed kid. And with minorities especially, the truth is, particularly in under-resourced and marginalized communities, we see bad when it's really sad or depressed or at risk. And so instead of sadness, what we may see on the surface is rage, which scares us, and again, is another barrier for that kid getting help. So the risk factor is being invisible, being that iceberg below the surface. And that can happen with, those risk factors include depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, stress in general, loss of, or a conflict with a close friend or family member. History of any physical or sexual abuse can be a red flag. Exposure to violence at home, in the community, at school, use of substances, alcohol, drugs, anything that's self-medicating. Becoming pregnant, getting a sexually transmitted infection, other red flags for something's not going right. Being the victim of bullying. If you're a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, or questioning youth, those kids are at risk for low self-esteem and depression. And exposure to the suicide of a family member or of a friend can be an inciting event. Being adopted can be a risk. Although, again, all of these things, not any single one of these things is going to do it for every child. It's almost like a confluence of events, or family history of suicide or depression or anxiety. Other red flags. We have direct verbal cues, such as, I wish I were dead, I'm going to end it all. We have indirect verbal cues, things like, I'm tired of life, I just can't go on, my family would be better off without me, who cares if I'm dead anyway? We have things like behavioral clues, like cutting, a previous attempt of suicide, acquiring the means, like stockpiling pills or a weapon. If you have sudden giving away of all your belongings, drug abuse or relapse, apathy that's noticeably different, physical symptoms that are noticeable, chronic headaches, chronic belly aches, other things, change of sleep patterns, suddenly eating a lot or suddenly not sleeping at all, doing riskier self-destructive things in a way that you didn't used to see before. And again, that giving away of your belongings, cleaning house, that can be a big red flag. So when should we worry? Adolescence, the brain from 0 to 15 is like a big shrub that's developing neural pathways and myelinating. And then from 15 to 26, it's almost like you're pruning the tree and making a really steady trunk and steady branches and hardwiring neural pathways. That frontal cortex executive function doesn't happen till late in adolescence, if at all. We hope at all that it does come. And so you can have that confluence of people being a little bit impulsive and noodling something compulsively or obsessively. So, boy, I'm worried about this relationship, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, or this isn't going right, this isn't going right. And then having a moment of impulsivity be a lethal moment. The problems where there's not an easy solution are conducive to somebody having a moment where they act out. And clusters, interestingly, are common on Mondays because the kid's been noodling it, and then all of a sudden Monday, they got the whole bad week coming ahead and the problem's not fixed. So that's the day we see it. We also see it on holidays, and we also see it whenever there's an added stressor, like something that didn't go their way, or a major disappointment, or a bad grade, or a breakup, or an argument at home, at school, in the community, wherever. Next one. So in Palo Alto, in about 2009, they had a pretty serious cluster of suicides. And when asked, where's the data? One of the parents of a deceased, one of the teenagers said, first of all, you're talking about my son. And second, they are not robots. You can't break them open and find the broken circuit. It's so complicated. There's so much you don't know, and you're never going to know. We're not going to have the answer. We'll just do our best. So what did we learn from Palo Alto? We learned a bunch of stuff. We learned that you do want to provide support for staff and students and spaces to let everybody process their grief in school and out of school. And we also learned that if you romanticize it, that you end up with a cluster. And so you want to strike the right tone between respecting and valuing each kid's life while not allowing the next child to envision their own hero's death. So what that means is no rose petals all over the school, like what happened in Palo Alto, and then suddenly they had more. They learned that you commemorate all of the kids who died that year in one time, and then you create a safe space to have that individual child remembered and valued. So you create a safe space, like in the guidance counselor's room, where there can be a memory book or a memory file or someplace where they can share with a trusted adult things that they have, but that's in one space. So in Palo Alto, they found that if they had things all year all over the walls, it almost provoked PTSD in everybody who was surviving and living. So figuring out how to create that safe space to remember, but not bombard the living. So people can dose it in ways that are appropriate for them and for their own healing. So if you think about it, we've all heard about helicopter parents where they swoop in and they fix everything, and the kid never learns resiliency because the parents are fixing it out, everything instead. And what we'd rather do is have you think about being more of a lighthouse than a helicopter. So a lighthouse is ever present, it's available for guidance, but clearly it's not steering the boat, and it gives the kids a sense of a moral compass to help with that sense of direction. And my friend Ken Ginsberg, who's an adolescent medicine doc in Philadelphia, said, I like to think of myself as a lighthouse parent, reliably there, totally trustworthy, making sure he or she doesn't crash against the rocks, but committed to being, to helping him learn to ride the waves and letting him learn. So it's our active memory of how very special our children are that will restore them to their better selves during the moments when their behavior is completely not okay. So we have to kind of have that visual. So if it means having your favorite baby picture or toddler picture or little girl or boy picture of your loved one in your phone so you can remember that moment when you're ready to wring their necks, that's a great idea so that you can continue to keep falling in love with that same kid. And from Ken Ginsberg wrote a great book. He wrote 3 books. The first one's a little data-y, but the last one, Raising Kids to Thrive, captures a lot of teen voices, and it captures a lot of parent and practical adolescent medicine doc wisdom. He basically took all the words that we all say in our offices and in our communities and got it on the pages pretty darn well. So one of the quotes was, we're going to question you with everything, because that's just how we are. Instead of shutting us down with, because I said so, which I know sometimes is necessary, we want you to explain why and your reasoning behind it, and not in a patronizing way. So, how should we parent? When young people perceive that the love they receive is dependent on a specific A, or a performance marker, or a behavior, it becomes difficult for them to see outside their own efforts and feel worthy. So the aim of healthy parenting is not to shower them with praise and trophies and rewards, like the $100 for the A or whatever it is, but to figure out and have their self-esteem be dependent on the effort and how we and change how we think about rewarding them. So if your child's a teenager now, your added support can make a big difference in guiding him or her in a positive way, and also it's always fair game to have a do-over. You can always rebuild. If you've got a toddler or a little kid now, great. Take advantage of that and start striving to be at your best to help figure out how do we get him or her to be at their best with rewarding the effort and focusing on the effort rather than the achievement to help them build their resiliency. So with a toddler, just as they're proving that they think they need you the most, as they're learning to walk, they take their steps, you're holding them, and all of a sudden you go ahead and let them go. And in those steps where they're trying to reach you, they're proving exactly that they don't need you. So we want you to have those moments when they're adolescents and school-age kids also, so that you can prepare them for their own life cycle. And we want them to have a really broad repertoire of coping strategies so that they can fly. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Ruth Emery at the clinic, had twins. The twins had taken over her office while she was seeing patients one day. She had a poster that said, there's 2 gifts you can give your kids. One of them is roots and the other is wings. She came back in and they were going hee, 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 hee. And they'd taken a Post-it, and said, there's 2 gifts you can give your children. One is the roots and the other is your credit card. And she's like, okay, that's funny, you guys. She went back and saw another patient. She came back in and hee, 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 hee. They'd changed it. So there's 2 gifts you can give your children. One of them is your credit card and the other is wings. So they decided they wanted those so they could fly. And sadly, even with an amazing pediatrician mom, and she's very open about this in practice and with her colleagues and patients, she had one of those twins commit suicide as an older adolescent, and still has learned to carry that sadness, but still be able to live for her other children and give to all the patients that she cares for. And she's actually why I'm at the Cleveland Clinic. She's a remarkable role model. So children who feel secure without feeling controlled have less to push back against when they get to their teen years and may be more comfortable managing their own lives as an adult. So next slide. So we want to shower them with adoration and high expectations. When your kid is pushing your buttons, take a deep breath, take that visual image of the adorable child inside and make sure you can see them and remember why you absolutely, exuberantly, and irrationally fell in love with them in the first place. So when you have to discipline them, think of and instead of but. Because every time you say, blah, 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 you were so great about this, but everything you said before the but is gone. But if you say, I loved it when you cleaned up your room and did this for me, etc., and on Saturday night, I really need you to get home by midnight so that I'm not up and overtired on Sunday morning when I need to be at such and such a place and getting this done. So I'd love you to be that great kid I know you are. And here's some ways that we can partner on this. And with minority children in particular, or adopted kids, or any kid who's at risk, when societal messages are tearing them down, build them back up. Counteract those messages. Next slide. This is a biggie. There's 4 parenting styles that we talk about a lot. And I used to have the darndest time remembering authoritarian, authoritative, which was the good one, which is the bad one, which didn't I want. And actually, I finally kind of, for myself, figured out authoritarian, totalitarian. Those are Aryans that are bad. So anyway, authoritarian is the ones that, set high expectation. They have a lot of rules, but not usually a lot of explanations. So parental control means parental love. Do as I say because I said so. Or don't question my authority. Or until you're 18, I'm the boss in the house. That one always worries me because, okay, the kid turns 18 and suddenly they're the boss. That doesn't work so well either. Yeah, at least not in most households. Then we have the marshmallow mommies or the marshmallow daddies where it's an overly permissive style. And you may teach values. You may be awesome at showing the love and warmth and support, but not so good at the boundaries. And in that situation, the child may be their best friend, and you fear losing their love if they fight or say no. So red flag if in your mind you're thinking, oh yeah, my kid's my best friend. All right, cultivate some best friends for yourself in your other realms of life and let them cultivate their own best friends as well and have you be that very special parent because they only get one of you in that role. And it doesn't matter if it's what kind of household it is, a one mom, a one dad, a mom, a dad, a two moms, a two dads, whatever it is. They only get one of you. So savor that. And with the marshmallow mommy kind of thing, boundaries are important. I went to a school called Laurel, and Laurel was an all-girls school with a uniform. And I had a patient who was there, and she came in every winter for her checkup. And in 8th grade, she said she was going to transfer to a co-ed school called Hawken, which is a liberal arts kind of a college prep school. And 9th grade, she came back in, told me about Hawken. 10th grade, she came back in. She was back at Laurel. And I'm like, okay, you were at Hawken only for a year. What happened? She goes, well, at Laurel, when I wanted to rebel, all I had to do was wear pink socks. And they were out of uniform, and I could get in trouble, and I knew my boundaries. At Hawken, I couldn't find my boundaries, and I was going to get myself in big trouble. So she figured out her own way to rein herself back in. So we are the lighthouse to guide them, have the moral compass, but also to create those boundaries so they don't founder on the rocks either. The disengaged parent may be too overwhelmed or too distracted to recognize their kids' needs. They may not believe they have much influence anyway. And often it's because they're working 3 jobs, or they're a single parent, or they're trying to scramble to keep the roof over the family's head. There's good reasons they may be disengaged. But what happens is that philosophy of do what you want, kids are going to be kids, I figured it out, my kid will figure it out too, that can be a challenge for finding boundaries and finding that love to grow the roots and be able to spread their wings in a safe way. So authoritative, that word was hard for me too. Balanced is a little easier to remember. They're the family that sets loving limits, expects good behavior, offers love, but is flexible and responsive as they need to be. They listen to the teen's viewpoint, encouraging the teen to make decisions and resolve problems. But if ever safety or issues of morals or character or morality are in question, there are clear rules. So, I love you. I'm not your friend. I'm your dad or mom. That's better because you only get one of me. I'm going to trust you to learn most things on your own. You'll get freedoms as you earn them. But for things that really matter or might get in the way of safety or what is right or wrong, I'm going to be expecting you and guiding you to do what I know is best. So, also from Ken Ginsberg as well. Parents should have a balanced parenting style, and when they do, they know the most about their kids. Parents who listen well have kids who choose to talk. Parents who make it clear that their concern is about safety have kids who appreciate their involvement in those boundaries. Parents who let their kids win when the kid puts forth a cogent or logical argument have kids who will tell them things. And parents who reward responsibility with earned privileges and reward effort with earned privileges raise kids who do the right thing and who don't just give up if they don't get the prize. So more parenting pearls. If you've got a kid with 2 A's, 2 B's, and a C, and you say, all right, I want you really working on those C's, and let's get those C's up. Turns out the C's will come up. The B might stay a B, the A's are going to come down. But if you say, wow, those 2 A's, that was awesome effort. Well, how could you do more of that? That was great. I love how hard you worked on those. The A's stay, the B's come up, the C comes up. So catch them doing something right and say, do more of that. And fair play, reverse is fair play. So have your kid catch you doing something right and say, and partner with them and say, hey, if I parent in a way that really helps you knock the ball out of the park, in a way that makes you proud, and that you're proud of your effort, that you're proud of how hard you work to get there, tell me what I'm doing that I can help. And same way, if you have a kid who's stressed, if you can say, hey, I'm here. If there's things I can do that make it better for you, let me know what I can do to help. And kids may be seen as lazy, but it may be that they care too much and they don't want to disappoint you, or they've been disappointed and don't yet have the skills to feel they can bounce back. So if we assume lazy, kids may say, okay, she's expecting the worst of me anyway. Why bother making the effort? And so they'll take the easy way out. So they may feel ashamed or angry that we don't see them for who they really are. So we're great at doing that, catch them doing something right when they're 2. So for instance, the parent who has the kid who's running, la 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 la, splat. If the parent goes, uh-oh, upsy daisy, picks the kid up and helps him run again, that kid learns, I can fall and get up and it's okay. But if every time something happens, we're like, oh, you fell, then they learn, oh my gosh, falling's a pretty scary thing. I got to figure out how to stay on my own 2 feet here. So we want to be with them, support them, build them back up. So other common sense rules. So to be strong, they need our unconditional love and absolute security and a deep connection to at least one caring adult. Ideally, that's one caring adult as a parent. It could also be a coach, a teacher, a police officer, a minister, anyone who's a caring adult and sees that child. Sometimes the best thing we can do to help our kids is to get out of their way. So that's where the don't just do something, stand there works. Thank you. And the other piece of it is, if you don't know what to say, it's fair game to reflect back what they said, to mirror and say, oh, wow, that sounds really horrible. Tell me more. What else? So that you're getting a chance to hear and to share that you're hearing. They're going to live up or down to our expectations of them, and listening attentively is more important than what words we say. And that's true for just all situations, the mundane, not just crises. So other pearls, nothing we say is as important as what we do. So do as I say, not as I do, doesn't tend to work. So attend to yourself as well. Children only take positive steps when they have the confidence to do so. They gain that confidence when they have solid reasons to believe they're competent. And if children are to develop the strength to overcome challenges, they need to know that they can control what happens to them. And also, the more and broader the coping skills that they have, they're less likely to take as many of the risk behaviors that we worry about. So, big sense that I want each of you to feel is that you're not alone. The fact that this room has so many people in, we are not alone. And if your child is an adolescent now, your added support can make a big difference in guiding him or her in a positive direction. So we're going to have kids feeling sad sometimes, happy, angry, frustrated. And sometimes people don't even know what they're feeling. And the feeling, we're going to talk about it about what it means to be depressed and that there's things we can do to help and that they're not alone. So Carol Ann Dweck in the next slide, it used to be the middle school, actually Joanne Deek used to be the middle school head of Laurel, and Carol Dweck is something that at Laurel where they live and breathe the concept of growth mindset. So the operative word is yet. I can't do it yet. I'm not good at that yet. And so growth mindset versus fixed mind is something that Carol Dweck did a lot of research on. And she basically took a bunch of kindergartners or elementary school kids, and she gave them each a puzzle. Then she gave them another puzzle about the same level. Then she gave them a puzzle about 2 grade levels up. Then she took back and gave them a puzzle the same level as the first one. And she divided them into 2 groups. And one group, she basically told them, wow, that was a great puzzle job you did. You did that perfectly. So she just praised the end result. The second group, she praised the effort. You worked so hard on that one. That was a great amount of effort. Good job. And then she did it again with each one. And the kids who got the, you did that one perfectly. On the next test, they were scared to do it. They made more mistakes. Give them 2 levels up, and they completely floundered. Give them one the same entry level, they did worse on it than the first time. And the kids who were given the praise on effort were like, oh my gosh, that was super hard. Give me a harder one. And they actually did better on each successive test, and even best on that last test at the easiest level. So if you get into growth mindset versus fixed mindset, you're noticing the process, what they did to get there, rather than the product, the the perfect test, whatever it looked like when they got there. So we're praising the effort, not the results. And we learn from failure and try again. So the more specific you are with your praise, the easier it is for kids to get that. So in growth mindset, you feel smart when you grow, when you learn. In fixed mindset, you feel smart when they avoid errors. So they're more likely to stay in their comfort zone. Next one. So when kids are sad or anxious or overly sensitive, see their feelings as a blessing, as a strength, and that something that with hope together, we can help you, we can feel with you, and the feelings are not the enemies. And then give them that unconditional positive love. If you say, just get over it, or just get past it, or stop making such a big deal of it, you're not validating and being with them with the feelings. I hear how sad you are about that. I hear how upset that's making you. I'm sad that that's making you so upset. I feel your pain. And in these sad times, especially again, it's another moment where don't just do something, stand there, be there with them, listen, validate. And it's fair game and okay to seek help. And literally there's help on north and south waiting for you if you need. So you want to tackle, especially with the concept of seeking help. If you're ambivalent about therapy being a positive or a good thing, your kid's going to read that ambivalence. So if you don't believe it's going to help, the kid's going to pick that up, and it'll be a barrier for them. So they'll read your mixed emotions and risk becoming more ashamed or more resistant to help. Emotional distress is treatable, and professionals know how to support people to make them feel better. So seeking help is actually a strength, not a limitation. And the other one is to remind them that professionals are designed to honor their privacy and not to reveal their private concerns unless it's an issue of safety. And their job is to help you find the strengths and build on them. So Joanne Deek, who's that middle school head of Laurel, had a book, Helping Girls Thrive. You don't even have to read the book if you get the 3 C's: competence, confidence, connectedness. And it turns out that competence and confidence, if you feel comfortable doing something, and that's important. And kids are not going to be competent evenly. So they may actually feel confident at recess or on the jungle gym, but not so much in math. And having that unevenness be okay is important. And Connectedness, her third C. If you have a kid that's connected at home and at school, that kid's protected and is going to be much more resilient. So if you have a kid who feels marginalized in one of those places, figure out a way to partner with a caring adult and get that kid extra value in that own kid's eyes. And another C, character, that sense of right and wrong, the demonstration of that knowledge, and the tenacity in their choices, that's another big word. Contributions. If kids are seen as solutions, not problems, as assets, not liabilities, then if you find opportunities to add value to their environment, like chores, or in a stressed community, helping be part of a suicide prevention program for fundraising or for helping the living. So figuring out a way that a kid can give back and make a contribution can be a positive. Caring community, never underestimate the power of a caring adult. Coping skills, so that when life throws them lemons, they can make lemonade. And making sure that they know how to do things that don't just have to be a quick fix, but that effort over the long haul can really help with that coping. And control. If they can have a sense of control over anything in their environment, that tends to help as well. So, code word. 2 12-year-old patient twins of mine, when I brought up the subject, said, oh yes, we have a code word. It's our dog Lucky. And I was like, okay, tell me about that. Whenever they needed to get picked up from a scary situation or a play date or anything, they would call home or text home and say, Mom, I'm really worried about Lucky. And that was the code word for the parent to come and get them. And if they were in a situation where they needed to get out of there, they would call the parent and say, and work the word lucky into the sentence, like, I'm really lucky I'm here. And the parent would hear that and start yelling at them loud enough for their friends to hear, so the parents could be the bad guy and say, you are not lucky at all. I need to get you right now and pick you up and bring you home right this minute. So the code word allows a graceful exit, and it can be a code word that's easily found on text, so that if the friends read the text, it doesn't make it scary, and it shifts the blame so you can be the mean mommy or the mean daddy or the mean doctor, so that they can have an escape plan. And it's fair game for us to be blamed to enhance their safety. Check-in time. Your kid, when they come home from an evening out, it's fair game to kind of mandate that they have to come and say goodnight. That way you can sniff them, smell them, hear the slurred speech, etc., and they know that they're accountable. Turns out awesomely that some kids, that's also when they talk. And so if you've got one of those kids who is a chatty Cathy at 12:30 when they get home, okay, put the coffee pot on, listen, because that may be the time you get. And if their time is at 6 in the morning and that's when you need, toothpicks, and that's not your magic time, go for that 6 in the morning. So catch them where they are and have that check-in time. And it helps, that check-in time helps bring your heart and your mind in line. So the heart is saying protect them at all costs, and the mind is saying they got to learn from their life's lessons. So those are good times to check in. Now, you've all heard about toxic stress, and that epigenetically we know why that happened. Like, we wanted to be able to recognize the saber-toothed tiger and outrun them, or at least run fast enough that you could get out of the danger. And nowadays, we got to be able to figure out when it's a situational saber-toothed tiger and when it's just a kitty cat that looks kind of scary in the moment. So we don't want to have that fight or flight response where you're the cat on the ceiling for everything that's happening. So helping families to raise their skills can involve a bunch of stress management. The next slide. When you tackle the problem, you want to clarify it. You want to figure out how to divide it into bite-sized pieces. You want to commit to only on one piece or bite at a time. And it keeps the person from being overwhelmed, so it increases their sense of control over the problem in general. So It may mean helping them to make lists or timelines or put it on their iPhone. It may make some kids better to visualize what the end result looks like and visualize what taking the first step looks like. You want to avoid stress when it's going to be toxic stress. So if you know your kid's going to get jumped every time they walk down lane A to get to school or wherever, then help them go lane B and end around it. If you know that this situation is going to cause unbelievable angst, you don't have to tackle that situation first. You can figure out some end arounds till that kid is emotionally ready to tackle that one thing. And you have to be able to let some things go. So the serenity prayer that my mother-in-law, who was 37 years sober when she passed away, always said to us, pretty much every family gathering, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We have to know when we have to help them let it go. And taking care of their body, that means also taking care of your bodies, attending to getting enough sleep. Guess what? Teens need about 9.5 hours. Help them figure out how to unplug an hour before bedtime so that the screens are not waking their brain up before they need to go to bed. Help them to have some good eating habits too. And exercise, but not so much that they're compulsive about it, but enough to release some beta endorphins. Awesome. Mindfulness things. You can have a kid who has a panic attack learn, has anyone heard of 4 to 8 breathing? So you breathe in 4 breaths, 4 seconds, breathe out 8, to a count of 8. And you can also do it with like the Breathe app, but it's not so user-friendly to use an app when you're in the middle of class. So knowing how to do 4 to 8 breathing can be a big help instead. I get a little bit of head nodding, so some people are using that one already. And then making the world better when we are contributing to solutions, that is a form of stress management. So anytime you've got a kid who's stressed or marginalized or etc., figure out a way to get them engaged as part of a solution as well. At home, next slide. My son, my eldest, when he was 18 months old, actually I think he was 2 at that time, he had scattered his toys all over the place, and my husband said, okay, Andrew, let's pick up your toys. And he looked up at him with his 2-year-old big eyes and said, okay, Daddy, let's do it as a team. So, all right, he enlisted his helper. Engaging your family members, your partner, your colleague at work, etc., to be on board and an empowered member of the team is going to be a big, big help. So if you disempower or sidestep somebody key in your kid's life, that can be a hard one. Bring them along. Have a conversation. Share your thought processes and listen to theirs and see if you can come to some common ground. And if possible, and if there's parental fighting happening, take it offline out of kids' hearing range. And remember, these little pitchers have really big ears. So do it while they're at school where they can't hear you, or when you're at work where they can't hear you. And you can model growth and flexibility and resilience yourself, even if you've been through a pretty traumatic time. Be clear with your kids that you want them to work hard to become their best selves and that you support them on that journey. And I'll need your help to tell me how I can best be there for you. So you want to attend to the basics. Make sure you're getting sleep. Family dinners are awesome. And start young. If you start family dinners at 17, the kid's like, wait a minute, we had 16 years without family dinners. What are you doing now? So if you have little ones, start little. It's a lot easier. But again, it's never too late to start. And you can role model, okay, want to hear what the most embarrassing moment of my day was? And tell them what it was and what you did about it. You can talk about your highlight of your work, of your work day, how you failed and how you learned. So it does not have to be just your successes at work. Role model those other conversations. If you don't have ideas on what to say, there's little things you can get it on Amazon, like table topics. They'll help you with a question that you can do a question a night. And one of our friends have like a whole basketball team worth of kids. And we were doing family dinner with them. So there's a table of about 20 people around. And we were doing table topics. And the question was asked, what's the worst thing that happens in your family? And the littlest kid said, oh, math. Math homework is the worst. And we were like, what do you mean? And his older sister, the 16-year-old, goes, oh yeah, math at our house always ends in tears. And it turns out that Dad was a Yaley, and he was a gold medalist in the Olympics, and blah, 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 and he could do everything like this. And the expectation and bar and his explanations were so not where they were. It was an exercise in frustration. So he listened to that and was like, wow, I got to stop the math tutoring thing. Let's have the oldest do that instead of me. So figuring out, what are you proud about today as well? Now, when you have to reboot, it's fair game to apologize. And when there's a crisis, it's fair game to say, I am so sorry that this is where our family is right now. So apologies go a long way. And apology isn't an explanation or an excuse. And asking for forgiveness can be an opportunity to move forward. You still aren't going to be perfect. Nobody is. But with open communication, it gives you all the opportunity to grow together. So you may not even know what you did wrong, but it's still fair game. It seems like you're upset about something. Is there anything that I may have done or not done that I could make right now? So next one, social media. You want to pay attention to how social media affects you and your kid. Is it uplifting and positive? Is it causing comparisons and anxiety? It's okay to unplug. Some of my favorite mommy friend and patients will have November Media Free Month or July Media Free Month, where they aren't on social media or doing anything computer for an entire month. If you could at least have it be off at the dinner table, that's a big win. And although it feels like its own world, social media is not real life. People post their happiest moments, usually. And so if you're trying to compare to all their happiest moments, you're missing all the times they aren't posting. So the next one, for teens and adults, is social media making you depressed? If all you're seeing is negative, if you're constantly comparing yourself to others, if it makes you feel even more lonely, if you get angry because you're wasting a lot of time on social media, and if you're always judging others or feel like they're judging you, both negative energy and positive energy is contagious. So if you're finding that social media is an energy sap, it's going to cause you stress. So feeling excluded from your friends' fun that you see on social media, or you decide to get on Instagram or Snap for 5 minutes in between homework and look up and an hour has passed, or if your thoughts of others are more judgmental, it may be time for a break. And cyberbullying is a thing, and it's something not to take lightly. So to post or not to post, you want to face your problems instead of Facebooking your problems. You want to keep your account a reflection of positivity, one that's uplifting to you and others, and avoid the negative views of others. If you're down, seek out people you can trust. Don't seek out negative attention on social media. And if we think about it, parents know the internet is forever. Our kids may not know this yet, and they don't have that frontal cortex to realize that. So we can help be the boundaries for that as well. So bullying and cyberbullying, there was a 2013 Youth Risk Behavior Survey that does 8th, 10th, and 12th graders in all 50 states, Canton included, and Perry included, and about 1 out of 4 girls and 16% of boys had been bullied on school property. 1 out of 5 girls and about 8.5% of boys were electronically bullied. 9% of girls and about 6% of boys did not go to school in the past 30 days because they felt unsafe to or from school. And both bully and the victim were at risk for depression and suicidal thoughts on that survey. Cyberbullying, we know that silence is deadly. If you know that cyberbullying or bullying is going on, be an upstander, not a bystander. Go ahead and report it to a parent, a teacher, or a caring adult. Make it known. If you don't think it's right, trust your spider sense. It's probably not right. Don't worry about being judged for reporting cyberbullying because you could save a life. So bullying has 3 essential elements. It involves aggressive or deliberately harmful behavior between peers that's repeated over time, and that involves an imbalance of power. So we're talking about school bullying here, or community bullying. And physical strength or popularity can make it difficult for the victim to defend himself or herself from the bully as well. So when we think about media, has anyone heard of or seen any of the 13 Reasons Why? Oh, I'm thrilled that it's not the whole audience. It romanticized the act of suicide. There was a big outcry from the American Academy of Pediatrics, from the Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine, and all of our national organizations, because it was meant for over 17-year-olds, but we had a lot of 12-year-olds watching it. And the parents were not even aware that their littler kids had seen it. And if you have a kid who's already seen it, watch it with them, and then discuss it and help them distinguish reality versus fiction. The show gives an unrealistic view of accessing help. And you want to watch your kid after they've watched, and then talk about it again. Talk about how you access help. Talk about the role of caring adults beyond home who can help keep a kid safe. So what do you do if you're worried about a friend? 1, make sure they talk to a trusted adult, a teacher, a parent, a principal, a coach, a policeman, another caring adult, a fireman, spiritual support people. Continue to be a good friend, but make sure to get an adult involved. And depression does not mean stigma. And you want to help students process when they're trying to be there for a friend. Next one. So how can you feel better if you're feeling pain with loss in a community? Talk to someone. 1-800-273-8255 is our 24/7 hotline. Anyone see Mr. Rogers' segment on Look for the Helpers? So Mr. Rogers was a family friend. My father had drafted him for a partnership for children for the AP. He really does talk. He did talk like that. And he wore his sweater because he was all tattooed up. But so he has a quote. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. And he had tattoos because he was in the Navy as well. Spend time with people who care for you. And that can be any of the caring adults. Don't assume others know how you feel. Ask for help. Ask again and ask again. What if it's your child? If you suspect that your teen or younger child might be thinking about suicide, talk to him or her immediately. And then again, and listen. Don't be afraid to use the word suicide. Talking about it has been shown not to make kids do it, but it helps kids access help better. Ask your teen to talk about his or her feelings, and then make sure you're listening. Don't dismiss it. Oh, get over it. Oh, it's not so bad. Tell them you love them. Tell them you love them again and again. Let them know that you're there to help. And then call for help if you think it's a crisis situation that moment. 911, National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That's 1-800-273-TALK. Or call your teen's doctor. And what else? Get the guns out of the house if you can. If you can't, make sure that the guns are locked in one place, the bullets or ammunition is locked in another, and that the keys are with you or separated from where the kid is. I had a grandmother bring in a 10-year-old. She had custody, and she said, oh, yeah, we have a gun in the house for safety, but he doesn't know where it is. And the 10-year-old rolled his eyes, so I turned to him and said, okay, Jeremy, tell me where the gun is. He's like, oh, yeah, it's in Mom's closet on the 3rd shelf in a shoebox behind her, this and this and this, and the bullets are right over here. And the grandma had no idea. We see this over and over again. If you can't get the guns out of the house, again, separate and lock bullets and ammunition from the gun. Go through the medicine cabinet. So if your kid has a dark moment, they can't take everything there and have a lethal moment. So you want to make sure that if you need to have enough Tylenol in the house, you maybe have 5 there, but the rest are at your office or somewhere else, and you can keep replenishing. And we want to, next slide. The Let's Talk program is another resource thing, and keep going. What can a teacher or a parent or a caring adult do? Talk to your student about suicide. Don't be afraid that you'll be putting ideas into their head. And asking for help is the single skill that's going to protect your student. So role model and help them with that. Help them feel competent, confident, and connected to caring adults in the community. Cultivate all those C words and come up with some more of your own. Know the red flags for depression and anxiety and suicide. Basically, think about that iceberg. What's below the surface? If they're really cranky and irritable, say, hey, are you okay? I'm here for you. Tell me what's going on. Remain calm. If we get distressed every time they tell us something, they're not going to tell us anything because they're going to be afraid of our reaction. And listen without judging. Be prepared for intense feelings. What else can we do? Supervise constantly. If you have a suicidal kid in your classroom, don't leave them alone. Ask if he or she has a plan and then remove that plan if it's right handy. Respond immediately. Get the kid to the place with the school's crisis team. And then be a part of the solution. Join the crisis team. Be a first responder, be a second responder, be a caring adult. And as a community, what can we do that does not glamorize the deceased? You can sponsor a day of community service in honor of those who've died of any cause, not just of suicide. And you can commemorate them, but put that in a special place. Don't have it everywhere. There was a kid in a suburb near mine, Beechwood, Ohio, who just passed away last month. And her family had a family calendar in the mudroom by the back door where everybody wrote on it what their stuff was, and they couldn't even look at it for a month. But they finally figured out as a family, what are we going to do with this? We still got her up on our calendar. Our calendar has all her stuff on it. So what they did is they put on her slot, in our hearts always. So she's on their calendar, part of them, and they can have a heart moment when they need, but they can still keep going forward with the activities of the calendar that they need to do. You can help people raise funds or do a suicide prevention thing, purchase books for the school library on coping, Raising Kids to Thrive, Mindset, other great books. I have them listed at the end. Help the school implement a curriculum on skills building and resiliency. So media coverage, thank you from the media for being here. And you can help or you can hurt. So certain types of news coverage increase the likelihood of suicide in vulnerable individuals. The magnitude of the increase is related to the amount, duration, and prominence of the coverage. What that means is if you explicitly describe the method, if you use dramatic or graphic headlines or images, and you repeatedly, extensively have coverage, that sensationalizes and glamorizes the death. If you talk instead about depression, a real problem, and there's help, or ways that you can emphasize the helpers or the solutions, that's going to decrease the net suicide. So covering suicide carefully, even briefly, can change public misperceptions and correct myths, especially about accessing help. And that can encourage those who are vulnerable at risk to seek help. Do we have time for a video or no? How are we? If I can get this to play, or if you can get this to play, go for it. This is Teen Voices.
I have my ups and downs, just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
I can be hard to figure out.
And I like my privacy. I don't want you looking over my shoulder all the time.
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual...
Acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason.
Or getting really mad.
Not able to sleep, Or sleeping too much.
Shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away.
Acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late.
Suddenly not doing stuff he used to love.
Or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed.
Not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself.
It happens. More than you think. More than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said
I
something.
wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, they want somebody to ask.
They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like, you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing herself is to ask, are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes,
Well, here's what you don't say.
That's crazy.
Don't be such a drama
you're
queen.
making too much of this.
That boy's not worth killing herself over.
That's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention.
You're not going to kill yourself.
What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad.
How can I help?
We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
A lot of people think about killing themselves. Adults and kids.
most of them never try it, but some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead.
I can't live with
I'm
this.
gonna kill myself,
Take her seriously. Find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure.
But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself.
Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
but don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts.
Make a list together right then. 3, 4, 5 names.
Put a suicide hotline number on there too.
Have him keep that list in his wallet, so he always knows where to turn.
Make sure your home is safe.
If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. The bullets, too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to.
We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask.
Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut.
Because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference.
All the difference.
In your kid's life.
Next slide. So, core messages. Friends, never let friends keep secret about suicide. You need to tell an adult. No student or child or teen should ever feel that they're totally responsible for the safety of another student. And go ahead and move me 2 slides forward, if you could. Well, in case you can't. There's other resources. More Than Sad, Teen Depression, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We have the Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. We have Suicide Prevention Resource Center, the American Foundation for Suicide, Suicide Hotline we talked about. There's something called Frontline Service, which is suicide prevention hotline for teenagers. That's a 24/7 number of 216-623-6999. One more slide forward. Or you can text FLS, Frontline Service, FLS, to 741-741. And they have online chats. Other resources, Mental Health First Aid, Mind Peace, the Ohio Suicide Coalition, After a Suicide, a Toolkit for Schools, the Children's Safety Network, Cognito. And then next one, great books. Ken Ginsberg's book, Raising Kids to Thrive, I love. Great Parenting Pearls. Carol Dweck, Mindset, awesome read. Angela Duckworth, Grit, that teaches that tenacity. Zhang Vo, another adolescent doc, has a book called The Mindful Teen, which goes through how do you teach mindfulness to kids in school settings or outside. And then you don't have to read Joanne Deek. All you have to remember is competence, confidence, connectedness, and you got her. And lastly, you and your family matter. Help every kid feel loved and valued. Loving limits at home and at school matter. Have your family define its own values and then serve as that lighthouse and moral compass for the kid. Get help if you need and destigmatize accessing that help. If you have high expectations for yourself and your child, you can help them live those expectations. Aim for balance without being a marshmallow mommy, an absentee parent, or an autocratic totalitarian parent either. Help your kid make healthy choices because we are all in this together. And last slide is the my home. Everybody deserves world-class care and world-class support so that we can all be our best. Thank you so much for having me here. I think I went too long.
Again, just some reminders. Resources are located in the north and south hallways, and I'll be there for any questions after our very next speaker. Also, if you feel you have a need to talk to a counselor, our wonderful Perry staff is right back there. Margaret is waving to everybody. If you feel you need to talk to a counselor, they can get you squared away right away whenever you feel the need. Our next presenter is Jacob Morgan, who will be presenting the topic of how to keep your kids safe online. Jacob is responsible for all communication efforts, both internal and external, at the direction of the judges at the Stark Family Court. His responsibilities include press releases, community outreach projects, internship coordination, and compiling and publishing the annual report. Jacob also advises the court on technology deployments and projects. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jacob Morgan.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So I get the honor of talking to about one of the most frustrating things tonight, and that is devices, laptops, tablets, cell phones, social media, and how to kind of track all of that together. So let's flip the slide here, and I'll give you a little bit more background about where I'm coming from and why I'm up here discussing with you tonight, I guess. I've been with Family Court for about 10 years now, maybe 11. Before I was the assistant court administrator, I was the IT director for about 3 years. And I but helped develop different IT solutions within the court. We deployed smartphones to probation officers. We created social media accounts for probation officers to use with their kids, the juveniles that were on probation. So I had my hand in a lot of different things going on with the court. And then this, if you could flip the slide for me here, this law came about 4 years ago, and Judge Hall and I developed a internet safety program that we kind of rolled out to all the schools in the county because of the Jessica Logan Act that went into effect. So social media and kids' safety in Stark County is something that we kind of developed early on. I think at the time, we were one of 3 counties in the whole state that actually had a diversion program for kids that were charged with juvenile-related offenses. So this is something that we kind of took to heart. Judge Hall's in attendance tonight, so this is something that's very important, you know, to everybody here. This is not only what I do for a living, but also I have, you know, kids at home. I have, our oldest is in college, and I have our youngest is just starting middle school. So I'm right here in the middle of this with all of you guys in terms of what can we do? How can we keep them safe? How can we keep them, off of sites? Keep track of them when they're online? How can I control what they're seeing? There's so much out there. I love, love, love the lighthouse analogy Dr. Rome used. And if you don't mind, I think I'm going to use it from now on, all right? Because it's such a good metaphor, because that's exactly what has to happen. The kids need a beacon. They need some kind of direction. They also need to know where the rocks are at. And to expand on that analogy a little bit, lighthouses provide a safe harbor. If you get past it, there's a place where you can go and rest, because you can't be at sea all the time. And that's such a good analogy. Let me catch up here. So this next slide here, I had to put this up because when we started talking about these programs, my dad kind of came to mind. And he thought everything was a fad, right? He didn't believe in CDs because he thought those weren't going to pass, He didn't think the internet thing was going to catch on and all that kind of stuff. So in the early 90s, when MySpace was a thing, right? Does everybody remember that? You had one social media site, so it was really good to keep track of that stuff. He was like, this is just fad. It's not going to catch on. So this next slide here kind of shows you how far social media sites have gone. These are social media platforms now. So when you talk about social media, it's more than Facebook. It's more than Twitter. It's more than Instagram. Okay? So this is what we're going to have to keep track of. Now, that may seem like a lot. It is a lot. And when we go out and we give this presentation to schools, and I've given this presentations to different parent nights and things like that, I always get that question, there's so much. How am I going to... This is what it feels like most of the time, and I get it. But I also have to use a comparison, if you go into somebody's house and you walk in the front door and there's water all over the place, right? It's flowing out the front door. It's just a river. And you walk in their house and they're standing in the kitchen with a mop and they're cleaning it up. And they're like, I don't get it. I'm mopping this floor 8 times a day. I don't understand. You just go over and shut the sink off, right? You got to get where the source is. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit tonight. And I want to be fair and kind of throw this out and say this is not a magic wand. There is no such thing. And anybody that tells you that any kind of IT solutions is a one-size-fits-all, it's snake oil, because it doesn't exist. So what we're going to talk about tonight are tools you can use. All right, that video said it great. You know your kids better than anybody else. So you know what tools you need for what's going on in your house. Okay, so the things we're going to talk about, I might not necessarily use. There's definitely stuff in here tonight that I absolutely use 100%. My girls, if you talk to them, they're going to tell you they're the most unluckiest kids in Stark County, because I know what goes on all over my house as far as what's going on online. But some of these things apply to me, some of them don't. They might help you, they might not. You might need a combination of some things. But the goal is, if you could flip this, is to get this picture down to this. That's manageable. That I can deal with. That you can work with. Right? So these are just some tips here that we're going to talk about and see if we can get this a little bit more manageable. So, that being said, to get this kind of flow into your house, what you have to do is control where the internet comes into. Okay? And that starts with your wireless router. Pretty much everybody here wireless, I'm assuming, let's say that. It's 2018, right? Nobody plugs into the internet anymore. So the wireless router, that's where this all starts. So if we flip the slide here and we'll make this all official, I am deputizing everybody in this room as your own network administrators, okay? This is your job now. You have complete control over your network at home. Now, I'm gonna back up here and say that with my job at the court, I have a administrator login with the county. Okay, so I have a regular username when I need to use a computer. I have an administrator account that gets me into a lot of other places on the county network. There is maybe a half a dozen to a dozen people in the entire county with this kind of access. Okay, so even the access that I have within the county, I do not have unrestricted internet at work. They don't do it. There's certain sites that they absolutely block. So, when you go home and you have this discussion, and you start getting that pushback about, well, what if I need to get to this site? What if I need to get, how come the internet's being monitored? If you can honestly say that you can go to work or you can go to your job and you have unrestricted internet access, nobody here does that. All right? It's always regulated no matter where you're at. So to go home and apply those same kind of rules is completely logical. It's almost expected. So let's talk about managing your router. So if we could have the next slide, please. And one more. There are parental controls that are built into most routers now. So if you want to filter out websites by, ages, they're rated like video games. Different websites are rated like video games. There's games that or sites that are rated E for everyone. There's teen sites. There's, over 17 sites, and there's adult sites. All of those have a rating systems, just like video games do. So some of these routers, you can set up parental controls so you can only see what they're allowed to see. And can I have another one? There is, depending on who your internet service provider is, there's a website you can go to. It's called opendns.com. And what that will allow you to do is create parental blocks on your router at home. Okay, so and that's another thing too, let me say this. I don't like paying for stuff online. So all of this stuff is either free or low cost, okay, to you if you want to use it. OpenDNS is absolutely free. You could go in there, you sign up for an account, it'll ask you some information about your router, the IP address, which is a little sticker on the back of it, and then you can go from there. As a disclaimer, this does not work if you have AT&T as an internet service provider because their routers already have this built in, okay? There's also a really cool app that you can put on your phone, and this is both Android and Apple, and it's called Fing. F-I-N-G. So what this app does is this will actually scan through your network and show you all the devices that are attached to it. All right. This is really handy as well because I know when I go home, I can scan through my network and I have at any given time 12 devices on my network. So if I scan my network and let's say I hit 13 or 14, somebody snuck something into the house. Either that or my neighbor's mooching off my Wi-Fi, right? But it's a good way to kind of police who's connected to your network at home. Okay? And let me have one more, please. And lastly, when it comes to controlling your Wi-Fi, I am also a big proponent of not having arguments about my internet or who's using what. So if push comes to shove, knock the power off of it and get everybody off your network that way. Dr. Rowe made a great point about, no phones at the dinner table or internet-free zones and things like that. This is a great way to make that happen. We have a standing rule at our house. You can't use your phone at the dinner table. Everything's offline at midnight, or not midnight. Midnight on the weekends, 9 o'clock on school nights. So instead of arguing about it, you tell them, and then you cut the power. And they'll learn, right? It's repetitive. You might have to do it once or twice, but they'll learn, and that'll get them off your network. The Open DNS, you can also set timers on there. So if you don't want any devices on your network past 9 o'clock, it will sign those devices off, whichever ones you pick. So if I want to stay up and read SportsCenter on my laptop, but I want my kids' tablets to be off at 9, you can set that up through that Open DNS. You can say, I want this device off at this time. And then that ends their internet connection. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about managing devices. And if I could have one more. These are the big 3 devices that we're going to talk about tonight and how to manage them. Okay? I'm going to say right out front, I am an Android person. You have dog people, you have cat people, you have Android people, you have Apple people. I am an Android person, all right? So I know a lot about it because I use it all the time. That's not to say I'm not familiar with Apple. I have some tips for those too, but I'm going to lean more towards Android stuff tonight, okay? And they're not paying me anything like that, or I'm not getting any kickbacks or nothing like that. It's just I'm more comfortable with those devices. So next slide, and we'll talk about this here. And then one more, please. So in terms of managing Android devices, there's a way that you can connect all of the devices that you have to one common email address. Okay? So if you set up a family Gmail account, you can put 17 devices on that Gmail account. And then you can see what those devices are doing when they're online. The websites they're visiting, the pictures they're taking, their camera rolls, all that kind of stuff is all accessible to you. Okay, can I have another? Google just rolled out within the last year what's called a family link. Now, if you have younger kids, this is absolutely amazing. I use this all the time, and it is pretty much great. So our youngest, who just started middle school, is not quite at the age where she can open up a Gmail account, because you have to be 13 to open up a Gmail account. So what this family link allows me to do is I put this on my phone, and then I can create an account under my name, which gives me complete control over her phone. So for example, let's say that she wants to download an app from the App Store. I get an email telling me that she requested an app. Do I want to allow her to get it? So I have time, if I want to, I can research that app if I don't know a lot about it. I can see if it's appropriate for her, and then if it is, I'll give her permission and she can download it onto her phone. Now I can also control the App Store, so she can only see apps that are rated for everybody, or apps that are rated for teen. But if they're any higher than that, she can't see it. So if you were saying no social media until you're, X years old, then I can keep those off of her phone altogether. And I know she's not using it. It has a location feature on it, so I can always find her phone, because kids lose their phones all the time, right? So I can find it if she loses it. I can also lock her phone. I can set her bedtime on her phone. So when it comes time for, the discipline side of it, you lost your phone for 3 days because you shouldn't have done that. Instead of having those big arguments, I can just get on my phone and lock it. It will still work as a phone. She can still make phone calls. She can't get on the internet. She can't text. She can't, any of that kind of stuff. You can set different screen times for it. So this Google family allows you complete control over that device. And this is really nice for mitigating arguments and things like that, and seeing what that phone's doing online. One more, please. There's also a device manager that comes from Google's web browser, So if you go to a web browser and you open up the device manager, then you can find that device, you can track that device, you can lock that device, you can all that kind of stuff. All of these things are used for, instead of arguing, you can just kind of take that away. And there's no pushback or minimal pushback or anything like that. And then lastly, there's an app called Avast, which is really good for antivirus protection, but there's also an anti-theft feature on that too that will allow you to remotely lock the phone. So those are all really good tools to have, to use if you have an Android. That family link, I think, only works with, has to be a little bit newer phone, so I don't think it'll work with the older phones yet. But it's definitely something to look into, especially if your kid is at that age where they're almost ready for a phone, but not quite. But it'll allow them to keep the phone, for discipline purposes. They can still use it. They can take it to school. It's not like their friends are going to pick on them. You got your phone taken away. They can still carry it around. It's just a big paperweight. It doesn't do anything. Okay? But the family link is really super in terms of first-time phone users. Okay? Or if you have an older kid that can't seem to keep themselves out of trouble on it, you might want to throw that on their phone too. Everything's configurable on it. Okay, so let's talk about the other two. Microsoft devices, tablets, laptops is all operating in the cloud now, along with Apple. Now, Apple's come out with some much better parental controls, but it's still one account for one device. So you have to have a username, you have to have a password for that phone to work. Okay? Now, the difficult part about this is if you don't have control over that cloud, you're not going to have control over that device. So if you have a username and a password and your kid changes the password and locks you out, you're not going to be able to control that device anywhere. Okay? So if you have devices like this in your house, that your child's using, a Windows tablet, iPad or anything like that, make sure it's a shared account and make sure it's something you have access to, because that's the only way you're going to be able to see where that device is going when it's online. Okay. Go ahead and flip that slide for me. One more, please. Okay, the PC monitoring side of it, and this is slowly becoming obsolete because there's not a whole lot of people that have PCs in their house anymore. But this would be like laptops and towers and things like that. The new Windows, anything past Windows 7, has an administrator account for that PC, and you can set up different users underneath of that administrator account. Now, what's nice about this is if you set up an administrator account and then you make the kids' user accounts underneath of that, they can't install and run programs without you knowing about it. They have to have the administrator log in for it. Okay? So what that means is you're not going to get near as many viruses on that PC. Okay? I remember when our oldest was in middle school, I was spending like days. A couple days out of the month, I would have to go in and grab that laptop and clean it out because there was just so much stuff on it. Because she would just go to websites and, yeah, I'll download that. Yep, give me that too, I'll download that. And it was just collecting viruses all over the place. But once I switched her account over and she was just a standard user, I didn't touch that PC, I think, till we got rid of it. So that administrator account gives you unrestricted access to the hard drive, which is something that not everybody in your house needs. So if you take that away, if you control that a little bit, it'll not only cut down on the amount of viruses you get, but you can also kind of track where it's at. The Windows parental controls, they've come a long way also. Windows 8 and Windows 10 have really good parental controls on there in terms of what an account can and can't do. There's also monitoring software that you can install on your PC. So if you absolutely want to know each and every website this machine has been to, there's a program out there, and this is a free download also. It's called WinSpy. And this will actually log everywhere a search engine has gone. And it supports Explorer, it supports Google Chrome, Firefox, if you have any of those, and I think even Safari, if you're running Apple devices. So you download this on your PC, and it will track wherever, if anybody opens a browser, all that information is kept in a file somewhere on your hard drive. And it will log the page that was visited, the amount of time spent on that page, where they went to afterwards, if they got bounced somewhere off of that page. It'll keep track of all that stuff in a nice, neat spreadsheet on your hard drive. So that's a really good tool in terms of tracking PC use. Okay? And I'll take the next slide, please. So when we talk about PC monitoring too, there's, you have to understand the trail, because everything that happens online creates some kind of paper trail. Okay? So the first part of that paper trail is a browser history. You know that little drop-down box if you're online and you click it and it shows you the last couple websites you visited? If your PC has been in your house for probably more than 2 days, that browser history should have stuff in there. If you're messing around on the computer and you hit that drop-down box and it's empty, something's up. Somebody erased your browser history because they were somewhere that they didn't want to get caught being. The download folder. This is in your libraries. And everything that gets downloaded online goes into this folder. So that's another good place to check. The cookies folder on your browser. If you have ever sat at your PC and you're like, oh my goodness, this web page is loading so slow, it's probably because your cookies need cleaned out. All right? I never thought I would stand on a stage and say your cookies need cleaned out, but I just did that. So your cookies folder, this is what a cookie is when you're online, is that's little bits of information from web pages, okay? If you've ever been on Facebook and you've searched something on Amazon and you start getting advertisements for like the same thing on all of your social media, right? And you're like, how did they know? It's because those cookies were on your browser. It's the same reason when you go to Amazon and it gives you that big warm Amazon hug. Welcome back, because it remembered you from those cookies. They help web pages load, but they also take up a lot of room, okay? But they will show you where that browser has been. So if you go to the cookies folder while you're cleaning it out because your browser's running so slow, you can also look and see where that's been. There's also favorites. Okay, if people bookmark stuff that they shouldn't be, you can see it. You can see it in the favorites folder and a recycle bin, because every person in this room knows kids throw stuff away, but they don't take the trash out, right? So there will probably always be something in the recycle bin because they just moved it over there and think it's gone. Okay, so that's kind of the trail. If you suspect something, if you want to keep track of where that PC's at, those are pretty much the main places you should go and check out. Now, external storage is starting to be a different animal now, and this is one place that it's really hard to keep track of, because schools now are doing all things on flash drives and things like that. And storage has gotten so cheap and so small and so fast that it's really hard to keep track of this. And I would say out of all of these things that I'm talking about tonight, this is probably the biggest one to kind of rein in, okay? Let's take, for example, I have a Gmail account that has 15 gigs of storage out in cyberspace somewhere. I have a phone on me with 64 gigs of storage. I have a flash drive upstairs that has another 64. I have a ton of storage on my tablet here. Now, if I wanted to hide something, where do you want to look first? There's so much storage out there. And well, let me back up for a minute, too, and give you a frame of reference, because I forgot to do this. If you're talking about storage, it's measured in bytes. And 1 byte would be a plain written text. Okay, that would be about a byte. Now, I don't mean no pictures or anything like that, just 1 byte. And then it's compounded in factors of like 100. Okay, so a megabyte would be 100 pages of written text. A gigabyte would be 1,000 pages of written text. Do you get where I'm going with this? Okay? So you can get things even online with cloud storage that would be like a terabyte worth of free storage. And a terabyte would be, 64,000 towers. I think I did the math one time, and that's how much a terabyte of storage would be. So that's really hard to rein in. So when it comes to checking external storage, I would offer you this advice. Is if there's something you want to keep tabs on, or if there's something you want to look at, just sit down and start clicking. And just click. And I guarantee you nothing is going to get your kids' attention faster than you sitting at their laptop just clicking. Just that mouse sound. Okay? Don't change anything, even if you don't know what you're doing. Just sit down and just start clicking on things. Open that homework folder. Just make sure there's homework in there. Okay? Open the little folder stack at the bottom of the toolbar and just see what's there. Check out their libraries. If you get a little dialog box that pops up and says, "Are you sure you want to save this?" Click no, especially if you don't know where you're at. But just click. There have been studies that have been done and a lot of reading that I've done, putting together these programs. And it said that if kids, all they need is a brief thought for a second that somebody's watching what they're doing. And that's what you're looking for. If you can create that little, I don't know if I should put that there because mom's been sitting at my laptop for a couple days. That's kind of the diversion you're looking for, or the intervention you're looking for. And finally, this last slide here, and please, please, if you don't take anything else with you tonight, can I have the last slide, please? There is no way one person can keep up with everything. You just can't do it, okay? I spend 8 hours a day with this stuff. I subscribe to maybe half a dozen newsletters I get in my email. You just can't do it. So ask somebody. There is no such thing as a dumb question when it comes to this stuff. Believe me. And your kids, no matter how internet savvy you think they are, do not know more than you. You're all in the same boat. This stuff changes so fast, it moves so quickly, you're all in the same boat. Now, they might be a little bit braver when it comes to opening up that file or checking out this app, or they might be a little bit more willing to experiment with them, but they don't know anymore. I don't know anymore. I have a tight group of people that I can go and talk to if I have a question. Everybody has questions. So please don't be afraid to ask. Get together with other parents. Hey, what's working for you? What are you guys doing at your house about this? My contact information is one more click away. Use it. If you have any questions, now, please don't all of you call me tomorrow, all right? I got a pretty busy day. But if you come across something that just completely stumps you, or you need some more explanation, by all means use it, okay? So let's go ahead and give them my contact information. I will be around here. Oh, that's nice and small. You guys are going to have a hard time writing that down. I will be around here for as long as you need me to be. So if you want to talk, if you have any more questions, please come find me. I'll be more than happy to explain any of this more in further detail. Okay? But I'm going to give this back to Ken here, and thank you guys so much for having me tonight.
Once again, would like to thank Dr. Rome, Mr. Morgan. Thank them very much for coming up and speaking to us. Remember, the community resource tables are in the north hallway as well as the south hallway, and all of our Perry resources are right out here in the main lobby. Again, thank you very much for coming out. Have a great night.